Hi, in this video we are going to be looking at multidimensional arrays. Multi-dimension. Multi-dimension. So let's think about it. So if you have a student scores for one exam and then you have student scores for second exam, it's the same set of students. Okay, so what's the point of having separate arrays for them? It is going to be, if it is for the same set of students, then you want to probably have only one, and then you should be able to track two out of that. So what I mean by that is, let us say, so there are three students that went for spelling bee, and then they had like the semi-final, so they had a match 1, they had a match 2. Okay, and then they have their scores. Okay, we don't need to have multiple, we don't need to have one array for this and one array for this, because they all refer to the same set of students. So it makes sense to have a grid-like array as opposed to just one array like that. So we want to put the grid in the memory. So when you want to put the grid in the memory, that is where your multidimensional arrays come. So for example, this array, like if we call it as quiz, so this array quiz has 3 rows and 2 columns. Rows denote this S1, S2, S3, 3 rows and 2 columns, M1, M2. Okay, and that is what we call as multidimensional array. So when you go into this memory of the computer also, there will be one storage called quiz, but then it can be logically thought of as a grid. So let's go to our code. I have a little prompt. Let's assume, like for the single dimensional array, we were looking at coin toss. Here we are going to think about having 2 dice, and we are going to throw together 5 times, both the dice together 5 times, and then we want to document the outputs. We all know a dice can have numbers 1 through 6 on it. So at any time when you toss a dice, that is the possible value. So we have 2 dice here, we are throwing it 5 times. So we want to be able to capture the data. So we know that the numbers are going to be integer, so we will say integer dice throw, and then we know it's a 2-dimensional array. So how many times, how many games are we playing this? So first time I throw 2 dice, so second time I throw 2 dice, so each row is going to be a game. So I said 5 times I'm going to do it. Oops. Okay, and every time I toss it, there are 2 outputs, so that is 2. So 5 rows and 2 columns. And then now right now I don't remember, so I'm going to make it blank. So we are going to do it 2 ways. One, we are going to just define the value so you know how to do it. Then we are also going to read the value as input. Okay, if we want to define it, what we do is, you have to define how every row will look. Okay, so first row data can be 1 and 4, then comma. Second row data could be 2 and 2, then comma. Third row, third time we toss, it could be 4 and 6. Fourth time could be 5 and 5, and there's a comma. And then the fifth time could be 6 and 3. Oops. Okay, so this is how we define the values inside an array. So let me also show you how to loop through this array, and then we'll just make another version of it so you can see how to get input for that. So this is one way to define the array. So if you already know the values that need to be stored and you just want to manipulate it, we can define it this way. So think about it. You have to parse through the row first and then parse through the column. So we are not just looping once, we have to loop twice. Okay, so let's go back here. So when I have an array, so I take the first row, that's my first loop, and then inside I'm going to loop through these 2. Then I take the second row, and inside I'm going to loop through these 2. Then I take the third row, and inside I'm going to loop through these 2. That is how I can access using a loop. So there is this loop 1, and then there is the loop 2. Loop 1 goes number of rows, loop 2 goes number of columns. Okay, so let's give it a shot here. So let's define two arrays for int I equal to 0, I less than 5, because it's the row I plus plus, curly braces. So this is my first loop. Okay, I want to get to the individual items, so I can't just use the row, I also need the column. For int j equal to 0, j less than 2, j plus plus. So that's my second loop. Now what happens? I got my first loop, second loop. How do I access my individual item? So I just want to say cout dice row of I j. So that is how I extract. So if I say I and j together, using I and j together, that is going to mean that that is how I access an individual item. I have to first loop through the row, then in each row I have to loop through the columns. So that is how you want to think about it. So now this is going to produce the output that I want. So it will say 1 4 2 2 4 6. Oops. I just had a tiny little bug here. This was supposed to be j and I made it as I, and that's when things just went nuts. Let's see now. So you can now see that I had a bug here. I had this as I, which is why it just went nuts, because it was going in a loop and it couldn't come out of it. So these are the elements, right, that we put in. So that's what we are seeing. So first element, let's see, it's kind of, I don't have an end line here, so it is sticking to the top. There. So that's just all the data that we have inside. So this is just to demonstrate how you can basically like get access an item during from a multi-dimensional array. Okay, so now let's say I just don't care about the values, I just want to like actually get them as input. So instead of cout, we are going to say cin. So I'm going to ask for data. Okay, so it's the same array, so I'm just going to say enter dice number and then j plus 1. So I just want to enter the data, and then I want to get that. This is the prompt, right? So here I want to say for who I am getting. So the columns should also have a prompt, because we need to know for whose data we are entering. So here I am going to be saying enter game number, and then this is going to be I. So for game number 1, enter dice number 1. What is the result? Game number 2, dice number 2, so on and so forth. Okay, so now let's run that. So I'm going to throw away every single data that is just one second. Every single data that is already here, I'm going to overwrite now. So instead of this, I should just say enter game number and then dice number. Results from game number 1, dice number 1, like that. Extra quotation. Okay. Yeah, we don't want that. So you can see here, enter results from game number 1 for dice number 1. So first game, so I'm going to say it is going to be 3. For dice number 2, it is 2. So for game 2, dice 1 is going to be 4, 4, 2, 6, 4, 6, 6, 6. And then that's the data it got. So I was able to input data, read the data into my array. Okay. Now we got the information. Now I want to know how many 6s are there. That's what I want to count. So I'm going to write logic to count 6. Okay, if the data is going to be 6, I'm going to add it to a counter. So I'm going to say int count for 6. So count for 6, that variable I'm going to be using. So I'm going to say count for 6. I'm going to be using equal to count for 6 plus 1. I want to only do it when the input is 6, not otherwise. So I just take this number. So this is my entry. If this guy, if dice throw double equals 6, if only it equals 6, I want to do this. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. I only want to do it when there is a 6. Okay. So I'm counting inside the loop. Now the loop is over. Now I want to display Cout total number of 6s equal to so rest is simple. So it's the same loop logic. So let's run this. Oh, I have to re-enter data. Oh my goodness. 4, 6. So there are 3 6s. That's what it's telling me. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. That's correct. So total number of 6s I got is 3. Okay, what if I want to display per game? In that game, how many 6s are there? Count for 6s is for total. Let's say I want to count 3s per game. For every game, I want to know how many 3s are there. So which way would it go? If we do it here, okay, the count, we have to count only here. So if there is a 3, I want to add it, right? If I get a 3, I want to set a counter. Right? Here's the thing. Counts per game means 2 dice are tossed. We know the result. The next game I go, this count should be clean, which means I have to display it every row. I have to clean it up every row. Okay. So this, you can do this, but outside in the first loop, you have to say Cout total 3s this game equal to okay, this game, how many 3 did I get? That's what I'm looking at. And before you start the game, you want to wipe that out. So you want to make sure this guy is a 0 every time you start the game. So when you start this iBusiness, you want to make sure you have a clean slate. So this is something you are doing. When I say per game, it means every row. Every row I'm cleaning it up. Okay. So this gets printed at the end of both the loops. Sixes get printed at the end of both loops. 3s get printed at the end of the first loop, the inside loop. Okay. Now let's see. So like if I give 3 and 3, it tells me total 3s for this game is 2. Okay. And I have 3 and 6. Total games for 3's is only given. 6 doesn't come yet. So 6 comes only at the end. So you can see number of 6's comes only once at the end of the final loop. But number of 3's came multiple times, as many times as you have games. If we have 5 games, it comes 5 times. So I just wanted to remember that. So we saw how to access two-dimensional. We saw how to assign values by doing the CN here. So this is, we are assigning value here. We are reading value here. We are declaring value here. And we also saw how to loop through. I hope you find this video useful. Let's go into this lab. The first part of the lab is 7A. It talks about this particular scenario of using a multidimensional array. The goal is to implement a multidimensional array in this assignment. So you collect 3 test scores for 5 students. So it's 5 rows, 3 columns. Store the student data in a multidimensional array, similar to what we did. Create another array called as average score. So here you're going to create another single dimensional array called average score. Then you're going to just keep calculating the average and pushing to that array. You have to display the contents and also identify the highest average score value. Okay. So this is just test data I've given. You don't have to use this data. But remember how we got input for this particular situation. You want to follow the same format. So this is only one portion. The next portion is going to be about pointers and references, which we'll cover in the next video. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye.